What do you mean? 3 months ago, you were just trying to handle a personal injustice. Now you're leading a support group for victims and talking about changing the system on national television. Lily hadn't thought about it that way, but Zoe was right. Her law school focus had shifted too. She'd originally planned to go into corporate law, but now she was considering civil rights or public interest work. Professor Garcia offered me a research position, Lily said, sitting down at their kitchen table. She's writing a paper on police accountability and civilian oversight. She wants me to help compile case studies. You're going to take it, right? I think so. It feels like the right next step. Her phone buzzed with a text from her father. Proud of you today. Not just for your courage, but for your compassion toward the other women. You're going to make a remarkable attorney someday. Lily smiled at the message. Despite the circumstances, her relationship with her father had deepened over the past few months. For the first time, she had glimpsed the man others saw. Not just her dad, but a leader committed to justice. Another text came in. This one from Detective Rivera. Just received word that 5 more women have come forward after seeing the press conference. Would you be willing to meet with them next week? Without hesitation, Lily replied, Absolutely. Let me know when and where. A knock at the door startled both roommates. Are you expecting someone? Zoe asked. No, Lily replied, suddenly tense. Old fears died hard. Zoe peered through the peephole, then relaxed. It's Officer Chen. Lily opened the door to find Chen holding a folder and looking apologetic. Sorry to drop by unannounced, she said. But I thought you'd want to see these right away. She handed Lily the folder. Inside were printouts of dozens of text messages between Officer Reynolds and Sergeant Wilson, dating back years. They discussed their fishing expeditions, the women they targeted, and explicitly mentioned using their badges to intimidate people. These were recovered from Reynolds' phone, Chen explained. The tech team just decrypted them an hour ago. They're the smoking gun we've been looking for. Clear evidence of premeditation and conspiracy. Lily scanned the messages, feeling a mix of disgust and vindication. This means the case doesn't rest solely on victim testimony. Chen nodded. Exactly. The prosecutors believe these messages will ensure convictions, regardless of how the defense tries to discredit the witnesses. After Chen left, Lily sat looking at the messages, thinking about how differently this could have played out. If she hadn't recorded those traffic stops, if she hadn't filed that complaint, if she had given in to the intimidation. You okay? Zoe asked, noticing her expression. Just thinking about all the people who don't have the resources or knowledge to fight back when something like this happens to them. Lily replied, I was lucky. I had legal training, a support system, and yes, a father in a position of authority. Most people don't have those advantages. So what are you going to do about it? Zoe challenged with a small smile. Lily closed the folder, her mind made up. Change the system. One case at a time if necessary. 3 days later, Lily stood before a classroom of first-year law students. Professor Garcia had invited her to speak about the case as part of a lecture on civil rights and law enforcement accountability. The system isn't perfect, Lily concluded after sharing her story, but it can work when people stand up and hold it accountable. The law is only as strong as those willing to uphold it, not just those who wear badges or sit on benches, but ordinary citizens who refuse to accept injustice. A student raised her hand. Weren't you afraid? After they threatened you? Yes, Lily admitted. I was terrified. But I was more afraid of what would happen if no one stood up to them. Because the thing about abuses of power is that they don't stop on their own. They only stop when someone says enough. As the students applauded, Lily caught Professor Garcia smiling proudly from the back of the room. The path ahead wouldn't be easy. The officer's trial was still months away, and there would be many challenges in reforming the system. But for the first time since that first traffic stop, Lily felt hopeful. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places, and sometimes the people who try to abuse their power choose exactly the wrong target. The investigation is because you're a citizen whose rights were violated, and you had the courage and foresight to document it. Lily thought about that. What happens to all the other women who were targeted, the ones who didn't have the FBI director as a father? They get justice too, Thomas promised. Every single case is being reopened. Every complaint, every lawsuit. He paused. And Lily, I'd like you to meet with some of them if you're willing. Your law background could help them understand the process. For the first time in days, Lily felt a sense of purpose replacing her fear. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about using her privilege and knowledge to help others who didn't have the same resources. "I'd like that," she said. "I'd like that very much." 3 months later, Lily stood at the back of a crowded press conference room, watching her father approach the podium. Cameras flashed as Thomas Matthews adjusted the microphone, his expression somber yet determined. "Today," he began, "I'm announcing the results of a joint investigation between the FBI and local law enforcement into systemic misconduct within the 5th Precinct. This investigation has resulted in federal charges against 7 police officers and 2 city officials." Reporters immediately began shouting questions, but Thomas continued steadily. "The charges include civil rights violations, abuse of authority, witness intimidation, and conspiracy to obstruct justice. Let me be clear. The vast majority of police officers serve with honor and integrity. But when individuals abuse their power and violate the civil rights of those they're sworn to protect, they must be held accountable." Standing beside Lily, Detective Rivera whispered, "You ready for what comes next?" Lily nodded, her heart pounding. Over the past 3 months, she'd gone from victim to key witness to something she hadn't expected, an advocate for others. She'd met with 17 women who had been harassed by the same officers, helping them understand the legal process and encouraging them to come forward. "I'd now like to introduce you to someone who was instrumental in breaking this case open," Thomas was saying. "A law student whose courage in documenting her experiences and filing a formal complaint helped expose this corruption." Lily took a deep breath and made her way to the podium. She'd discussed this moment extensively with her father. Going public meant giving up her anonymity, but it also meant putting a face to the case and encouraging others to speak up when they witnessed injustice. "My name is Lily Matthews," she said into the microphone, her voice steadier than she felt. 3 months ago, I was pulled over for the 3rd time by the same 2 officers. Each time they had no valid reason. Each time they searched my car without cause. And when I filed a complaint, I received threats meant to intimidate me into silence." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces and cameras. What these officers didn't know was that I was documenting everything, and what I didn't know at the time was that I wasn't alone. Many women before me had experienced the same treatment, targeted because they drove nice cars in certain neighborhoods, or because they might be connected to people in positions of authority. A reporter called out, "Were you targeted because you're the FBI director's daughter?" "No," Lily replied firmly. "The officers had no idea who my father was. I've used my mother's maiden name at school specifically to avoid special treatment. I was targeted for the same reason the other women were, because I fit a profile these officers had created, and because they thought I wouldn't or couldn't fight back." Another reporter asked, "How do you respond to claims from the officer's attorney that this is a witch hunt orchestrated by your father?" Thomas began to step forward, but Lily held up a hand to stop him. "My father recused himself from this investigation the moment my complaint became part of it," she said clearly. "This case was built by Detective Rivera, Officer Chen, and the dedicated prosecutors you see here today. My father's only involvement was ensuring I had protection after receiving explicit threats, something any parent would do." She gestured to the row of women seated in the front row. "More importantly, this case isn't about me. It's about these 17 brave women who came forward after years of being ignored. It's about the system that allowed these officers to continue their behavior unchecked, and it's about making sure this doesn't happen to anyone else." After the press conference, Lily found herself surrounded by the other women who had testified. Many had become friends during the intense months of the investigation. "That was amazing," said Vanessa, a nurse who had been pulled over 4 times by Reynolds and Diaz. "When they first approached me about reopening my complaint, I never thought it would lead to this." "I never thought anyone would believe me," added Tina, a college student who had received threats similar to Lily's. "After my complaint was dismissed the first time, I just gave up. That's what they counted on," Lily replied. "They chose targets they thought wouldn't have the resources or knowledge to fight back." Officer Chen approached the group. "Sorry to interrupt, but Detective Rivera wanted me to let you know the press release is going out now, with the full details of the charges." Lily checked her phone as the notification came through. The list of charges was extensive. Officer Reynolds and Officer Diaz were each facing multiple counts of civil rights violations, abuse of authority, and witness intimidation. Former Sergeant Wilson was charged with conspiracy and obstruction of justice for burying complaints. Assistant City Attorney Gregory Wilson was charged with evidence tampering and abuse of office for his role in quietly settling lawsuits to cover up the misconduct. "It's really happening," Tina said softly, reading the same release. "They're actually being held accountable." Later that evening, Lily returned to her apartment for the first time in 3 months. The protective detail had finally been lifted after Reynolds and Diaz were taken into custody without bail, deemed flight risks and dangers to the community. Zoe had kept the place spotless, and coming home felt both strange and comforting. "Welcome back, Rumi," Zoe said, giving her a tight hug. "I kept your plants alive, but no promises about your goldfish," Lily laughed. "I don't have a goldfish." "Well, then I definitely kept it alive." Lily dropped her bag on the couch and looked around the familiar space. "It feels like forever since I was here." "A lot has changed," Zoe observed, "including you." "Apparently," Lily replied, still trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. After her father's urgent call, they had grabbed essential items and left through the back exit of their building. A nondescript black car was waiting for them, driven by a woman who introduced herself only as Agent Patel. Agent Patel had brought them here, given them keys, and explained the security protocols before leaving with a promise that someone would contact them in the morning. "Lily," Zoe said carefully, "I don't want to pry, but what exactly does your dad do? Because this—" She gestured around the apartment. "This isn't normal dad stuff." Lily sank onto the couch, suddenly exhausted. She'd kept her father's identity secret for so long that it felt strange to finally say it out loud. "My dad is Thomas Matthews," she said. Zoe stared at her blankly. "Okay, and Thomas Matthews is—" "Director of the Federal Bureau of Investigation," Lily finished. Zoe's jaw dropped. "The FBI director? Your dad is the head of the FBI? And you never thought to mention this small detail?" "I don't tell anyone," Lily explained. "I even use my mom's maiden name at school. I wanted to be treated like everyone else, to succeed on my own merits. But why keep it from me? I'm your roommate, your friend." At first it was habit, then it just got harder to bring up. Lily gave a small, tired smile. "Hey, by the way, my dad runs the FBI. Want to order pizza?" Zoe shook her head in disbelief. This explains so much. Like why you never wanted to talk about your family or why you tensed up whenever news about the FBI came on TV. She paused. "So those officers have no idea who they've been harassing," Lily confirmed, "and I wanted to keep it that way. I wanted my complaint to be handled like anyone else's. But now," Lily sighed, "now they've escalated to threats and my dad is involved whether I wanted him to be or not." Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. For a moment, Lily's heart raced with fear, but the message read only, "Meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. Agent Patel will escort you." "Dad, what do you think is going to happen?" Zoe asked. "I don't know," Lily admitted, "but I have a feeling it's going to be bigger than a simple complaint about 2 patrol officers." Meanwhile, across town, Detective Rivera was working late, compiling evidence for what had rapidly evolved from a routine misconduct investigation into something much larger. The call she'd received that afternoon from the FBI had changed everything. Her desk was covered with files, not just on Reynolds and Diaz, but on Sergeant Wilson, Assistant City Attorney Gregory Wilson, and 3 other officers from the same precinct. Phone records, bank statements, arrest reports, all connecting in a pattern that grew more disturbing the more she uncovered. Her phone rang, startling her from her concentration. "Detective Rivera." "It's Officer Chen. I think I found something you should see right away." 20 minutes later, Chen arrived at Rivera's office with a flash drive. "I was assigned to digitize old case files," Chen explained, "and I kept noticing these overlaps in traffic stops involving Reynolds and Diaz, so I started tracking them on my own time." She plugged in the drive and opened a spreadsheet that mapped every traffic stop the 2 officers had made over the past 3 years. "At first, it just looked like they were targeting young women, which was bad enough," Chen continued. "But then I noticed this pattern in the locations." She clicked to show a map with dozens of pinned locations. They weren't random stops. They were specifically targeting women who lived in or visited these 3 neighborhoods. Rivera leaned closer, studying the map. "What's significant about these areas?" They're all neighborhoods where high-level officials live or have second homes. Government officials, judges, prosecutors. Chen pointed to several pins clustered in one area. This is where 3 federal judges live. And this area, she highlighted another cluster, has homes belonging to 2 state senators and a deputy mayor. Rivera sat back, the implications sinking in. They weren't just harassing random women. They were deliberately targeting women connected to people in positions of power. Exactly, Chen confirmed. I think they were fishing for leverage, looking for something they could use. And when they didn't find anything on Lily Matthews, they decided to intimidate her instead, Rivera finished, not realizing who her father is. I didn't know either until an hour ago when the FBI called asking for her file, Chen admitted. Rivera nodded, pieces falling into place. This changes everything. We need to bring in the chief immediately. The next morning, Lily and Zoe were escorted by Agent Patel to a large conference room in the federal building downtown. Lily had expected to meet just with her father, but when the doors opened, she was surprised to find a room full of people. Her father stood at the head of the table, looking far more official than she was used to seeing him. Beside him was Detective Rivera, the chief of police, a woman Lily didn't recognize who wore a Justice Department badge, and several other serious-looking individuals. Thomas Matthews' face softened when he saw his daughter. He crossed the room and embraced her briefly. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Lily nodded, just confused about what's happening. "You'll understand soon," he assured her, then addressed the room. "For those who don't know, this is my daughter, Lily. She's the complainant in the case against Officers Reynolds and Diaz." Lily felt all eyes turn to her. The chief of police looked particularly uncomfortable. "Ms. Matthews," Detective Rivera began, "I want to thank you for your courage in coming forward. Your complaint has led to the uncovering of a much larger issue within the department." "I don't understand," Lily said, taking a seat at the table. Zoe sat beside her, looking equally bewildered. The woman from the Justice Department spoke up. "We believe Officers Reynolds and Diaz, along with several others including former Sergeant Wilson, have been engaged in a systematic pattern of targeted harassment and possibly blackmail." "What does that mean?" Lily asked. Her father took over. Officer Chen discovered that the women being targeted all had connections to people in positions of authority. Judges, prosecutors, elected officials. "We believe they were looking for compromising situations they could exploit. Like finding drugs in someone's car," Lily suggested. "Exactly," Rivera confirmed. "Or creating scenarios where they could demand favors in exchange for looking the other way." The chief of police cleared his throat. "Ms. Matthews, I want to personally apologize for what you experienced. This kind of corruption has no place in my department." Lily glanced at her father, who gave an almost imperceptible nod of encouragement. "With all due respect, Chief," Lily said, "I'm not the only victim. What about the other women who filed complaints that were ignored? What about the 7 lawsuits that were quietly settled?" The room fell silent. The chief looked like he'd been slapped. "7 lawsuits?" he repeated, looking at the Justice Department official. "That's correct," she confirmed. "All handled by Assistant City Attorney Gregory Wilson, the former sergeant's brother. All sealed with confidentiality agreements." Thomas Matthews stepped in. "This meeting isn't about assigning blame, but about coordinating our response. We have evidence of civil rights violations, abuse of power, witness intimidation, and potentially obstruction of justice." "What happens now?" Lily asked. "Now," her father said, "we build the case properly. The FBI will work jointly with Internal Affairs on the investigation. Officers Reynolds and Diaz have already been suspended, and 4 others will be suspended by the end of the day." Detective Rivera added, "We'll need your formal testimony, as well as the testimony of other victims we've identified. And in the meantime," the Justice Department official said, "you'll remain under protection. Officers Reynolds and Diaz made specific threats against you, and we're taking those threats very seriously." After the meeting, Lily found herself alone with her father in his office. The room was exactly as she remembered from her childhood visits, meticulous but comfortable, with family photos displayed alongside certificates and awards. "I'm sorry I kept you in the dark," her father said, closing the door. "I've been monitoring the situation since your first call, but I was trying to respect your wishes to handle it yourself, until they threatened me." Lily noted. That crossed a line, he agreed, his expression darkening. But you should know. Your complaint was already gaining traction before I made any calls. Detective Rivera had flagged the pattern of behavior, and Officer Chen was already building her case. Your videos provided the evidence they needed, so it wasn't just because I'm your daughter. Thomas smiled slightly. The protection detail is because you're my daughter. So let me make sure I understand, Professor Garcia said, leaning forward in her chair. You've been pulled over 3 times by the same officers with no valid reason, and now you're concerned about potential retaliation because you filed a complaint? Lily nodded. I know it sounds paranoid, but last night someone called my phone and hung up when I answered. It happened 3 times. That could be anything, a wrong number, a telemarketer, Professor Garcia pointed out. Maybe, Lily admitted. But this morning I found this on my windshield. She pulled out a piece of paper from her bag and handed it to the professor. It was a printed note that simply read, "Drop it or regret it." Professor Garcia's expression hardened as she examined the note. Have you shown this to Detective Rivera? Not yet. I found it right before coming here. Lily took a deep breath. Professor, what should I do? I don't want to back down, but I also don't want to put myself in danger. First, document everything, Professor Garcia advised, handing the note back. Take this to Detective Rivera immediately. Second, consider getting a temporary change of residence, maybe stay with a friend who lives elsewhere for a while. And third? Third, Professor Garcia said with a slight smile. Remember that sunshine is the best disinfectant. The more people who know about this, the safer you are. Lily thought about that as she walked across campus. Her father had called twice yesterday, but she'd been in class and hadn't called him back yet. She'd been trying to handle this on her own, but maybe it was time to let more people in on what was happening. At the police station, Detective Rivera listened intently as Lily explained about the phone calls and the threatening note. I'm going to have this analyzed for fingerprints, Rivera said, carefully placing the note in an evidence bag. And I'd like to assign an officer to keep an eye on your apartment building. Won't that be obvious? Lily asked. That's partly the point, Rivera explained. If someone is trying to intimidate you, seeing police protection might make them think twice. She paused, studying Lily's face. There's something else you should know. You're not the only one who's filed complaints against these officers. Lily's eyes widened. How many others? 5 in the past year. All young women, all driving alone, all pulled over multiple times by Reynolds and Diaz. What happened with those complaints? Rivera's expression darkened. They were investigated and dismissed. Insufficient evidence. And mine? Yours is different, Rivera said. You have video evidence of all 3 incidents and... She hesitated. Let's just say there's suddenly more interest in this case from higher up. Lily wondered if her father had already made calls, but she didn't ask. Instead, she focused on what she could control. What do I do in the meantime? Be cautious. Travel with friends when possible. Keep recording any interactions. And call me immediately if you receive any more threats. Rivera handed Lily her card with her personal cell number written on the back, day or night. As Lily left the station, she felt eyes on her. Looking around the parking lot, she spotted officers Reynolds and Diaz leaning against a patrol car watching her. Reynolds raised his coffee cup in a mock toast when he caught her eye. The message was clear. They knew she'd filed a complaint. And they weren't worried about it. That evening, Lily finally called her father back. I've been worried, he said when he answered. You usually call back sooner. I've been busy, Lily explained. Then told him about the threatening note and her meetings with Professor Garcia and Detective Rivera. There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Dad, I'm here, he said, his voice controlled in a way that Lily recognized as barely contained anger. I want you to come home for a few days. I can't just leave in the middle of the semester, Lily protested. And besides, that would look like I'm backing down. It's not backing down to ensure your safety, her father argued. These officers have already shown they don't respect the law. A threatening note escalates this situation considerably. Detective Rivera is assigning an officer to watch my building, Lily told him. Another pause. She must be taking this seriously then. She mentioned there's suddenly more interest in the case from higher up, Lily said carefully. Would you know anything about that, Dad? I may have made a few calls, he admitted. But only to ensure your complaint gets a fair investigation, not to give you special treatment. Lily sighed. I know, Dad, and I appreciate it. But I need to see this through properly. At least promise me you'll be careful. And if anything else happens, anything at all, you'll let me know immediately. I promise, Lily said. What Lily didn't tell her father was that she'd decided to do a little investigating of her own. As a law student with access to public records and legal databases through her school, she had resources that most people didn't. The next morning, instead of going to class, Lily went to the university library and logged into the legal research terminal. She began searching for lawsuits against the police department, focusing on cases involving officers Reynolds and Diaz. 3 hours later, she had compiled a disturbing pattern. There had been 7 civil suits filed against the officers in the past 3 years, all settled out of court with confidentiality agreements. All involving young women who claimed they were profiled, stopped without cause, and subjected to intrusive searches. Lily printed the case summaries and was about to log off when she noticed something else. All 7 cases had been handled by the same attorney at the department, Assistant City Attorney Gregory Wilson. The name sounded familiar, but Lily couldn't place it. She did one more search and gasped at what she found. Before becoming Assistant City Attorney 2 years ago, Gregory Wilson had been a police sergeant at the 5th Precinct, the same precinct where Reynolds and Diaz worked, and likely their former supervisor. Lily gathered her materials and headed straight to Detective Rivera's office. The detective wasn't there, but Lily left a message asking Rivera to call her as soon as possible. On her way home, Lily stopped at a coffee shop to organize her findings. She was so engrossed in her work that she didn't notice the man watching her from across the street, or the way he spoke into his phone when she finally packed up and left. Back at her apartment, Lily found Zoe in the kitchen making dinner. "Where have you been all day?" Zoe asked. "I thought you had constitutional law this morning." "I skipped it," Lily admitted. "I was doing some research on those officers." Zoe raised her eyebrows. "Find anything interesting?" "Very," Lily said, spreading her papers across the kitchen table. 7 lawsuits all settled secretly, and the department lawyer who handled the settlements used to be their sergeant. "That's a massive conflict of interest," Zoe said, abandoning her cooking to look at Lily's findings. "Exactly, and it might explain why complaints against them keep getting dismissed." Lily's phone buzzed with a text message. "That's probably Detective Rivera calling me back." But it wasn't Rivera. The message came from an unknown number and contained just 4 words. "We know where you live." Lily's hands shook as she showed the message to Zoe. "That's it," Zoe declared. "You're not staying here tonight. You can crash at my boyfriend's place. He's out of town and no one would look for you there." "I should tell Detective Rivera," Lily said, already dialing the number. Rivera answered on the second ring. "I was just about to call you." "What's going on?" Lily explained about the text message and her research findings. "This confirms what we've been building," Rivera said. "Listen, I'd like you to come in tomorrow morning for a formal interview. We're expanding this investigation and your evidence is key." "I'll be there," Lily promised. "But is it safe? Reynolds and Diaz were watching me at the station earlier." "They won't be there tomorrow," Rivera assured her. "They've been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. It just happened an hour ago." After hanging up, Lily felt a wave of relief wash over her. Maybe the system was working after all. That relief was short-lived. As she and Zoe were packing an overnight bag, Lily's phone rang. It was her father, and he sounded more worried than she'd ever heard him. "Lily, are you at home?" he asked without preamble. "Yes, but Zoe and I are just leaving." "I got a threatening text." "Listen to me carefully," he interrupted. "I've just received information that Officer Reynolds has left the station after being placed on leave, and he was heard making threats against you. A patrol car is on its way to your apartment now, but I need you to leave immediately. Go somewhere unexpected, not to a friend's place they might know about." Lily's blood ran cold. "Dad, what's going on? How do you know this?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "It's time I told you what I've been doing," her father said, "but not over the phone. Just get somewhere safe and I'll explain everything when I see you tomorrow." As Lily and Zoe hurried down the back stairs of their building, Lily couldn't help wondering exactly what her father had set in motion and how big this was about to become. The safe house was nothing like Lily had imagined. She'd expected something austere and official, maybe a motel room with plastic furniture and bland walls. Instead, she found herself in a comfortable two-bedroom apartment in a high-rise building downtown, complete with a doorman and security cameras in the lobby. "Your dad arranged this?" Zoe asked, looking around the stylish living room with wide eyes. Zoe's eyes widened. No way. What was their excuse this time? "A broken taillight that magically fixed itself while they were searching my car without cause," Lily said, rubbing her temples. "And then they gave me a ticket for being slightly over the line on the shoulder, which only happened because they made me pull over there. That's harassment. Plain and simple," Zoe said, closing her criminal justice textbook. As a third-year criminology major, she took particular interest in Lily's encounters with law enforcement. "Please tell me you recorded it again?" Lily nodded, pulling out her phone. "Got the whole thing. That's 3 videos now." "You need to file a complaint," Zoe insisted, not for the first time. "This is exactly the kind of thing the department claims they want to know about." "I called my dad," Lily admitted. "I'm sending him the videos tonight." Zoe raised an eyebrow. Lily rarely mentioned her father and had never called him for help with anything since Zoe had known her. "Must be serious if you're bringing in the big guns," she commented. "What did he say?" Lily shrugged, not wanting to reveal too much. "Just that we'd talk about next steps after he sees the evidence." What Lily didn't say was that her father had barely controlled his anger when she described the officer's behavior. Thomas Matthews didn't get angry often, but when he did, things happened. Big things. "I'm going to make some tea and look through these videos," Lily said, standing up. "I need to organize everything if I'm going to file a formal complaint." Meanwhile, across town at the 5th Precinct, Officer Reynolds was leaning against a desk in the bullpen, talking with Officer Diaz and Sergeant Wilson. "Nothing again?" Wilson asked, frowning. "That's the 3rd time with that blue sedan." Reynolds shrugged. "Clean as a whistle. College girl, driving a nice car through the heights. Still doesn't add up?" "Maybe she's just a college girl driving a nice car," Officer Chen suggested as she walked by, clearly having overheard the conversation. Diaz snorted. "Nobody drives through that neighborhood unless they're up to something. Trust me, she's either carrying or she's meeting someone who is." "Your profile stops are bringing in good numbers," Wilson admitted, looking at the monthly report on his desk. "But 3 times on the same person with nothing to show for it? That's the kind of thing that gets noticed. By the wrong people. She's hiding something," Reynolds insisted. "You should have seen how nervous she was." "Maybe because it's the 3rd time you've pulled her over for no reason." Chen muttered under her breath as she walked away. Wilson ignored the comment. "What do we know about her?" "Lily Matthews, 22, law student at City University. Intern at Henderson Legal Aid," Diaz recited from memory. "Lives in the Westview apartments with a roommate." "Law student," Wilson repeated with a grimace. "Those are the worst. Think they know everything about police procedure because they took one criminal justice class." "She was recording us," Reynolds added. "Had her phone out the whole time." Wilson's frown deepened. "Did she say anything about filing a complaint?" "Not specifically," Diaz replied. "But she had that look." Wilson drummed his fingers on the desk. "Lay off her for now. Find another route to check. I don't need internal affairs breathing down my neck because you two have a hunch about some law student." As Reynolds and Diaz walked away, Detective Rivera from Internal Affairs watched them from across the room. She'd been monitoring the conversation, making mental notes. This wasn't the first time she'd heard similar discussions among this particular group of officers. Back in her office, Rivera pulled up the precinct's arrest records for the past 6 months. Reynolds and Diaz had impressive numbers, almost too impressive. Their traffic stops resulted in arrests at a rate nearly double the department average. She began cross-referencing the locations of their stops with demographic information about the drivers. A pattern quickly emerged. Young, attractive women driving alone through wealthy neighborhoods. The official reasons for the stops were minor infractions, broken taillights, rolling stops, improper signaling, but the officers consistently requested to search the vehicles. Rivera leaned back in her chair, troubled by what she was seeing. This wasn't random. This was targeted harassment with a clear profile, and Sergeant Wilson was allowing it because the numbers looked good on paper. She closed the files and made a decision. She needed more evidence before taking this up the chain, but she wouldn't let it continue unchecked. The next morning, Lily woke up to a text from her father. "Call me when you're up." She made coffee first, needing the caffeine to face whatever conversation was coming. When she finally called him, his voice was calm. Too calm, the kind of calm that meant he was holding back. "I watched your videos," he said without preamble. "All 3 of them." "And?" Lily prompted, curling up on the window seat in her small kitchen. "And you're right to be concerned. This is textbook profiling and harassment," Lily sighed. "I knew it. So what do I do now?" "You have options," her father replied carefully. "You could file a complaint with the department's Internal Affairs Division. But these things often get buried, especially if the officers have a supervisor protecting them." Lily stared out the window at the morning traffic below. "I could go to the media." "You could," he agreed. "Though that might make you a bigger target." "What would you do?" she asked after a long pause. Her father was silent for a moment. "If it were me, I'd document everything, file the official complaint to create a paper trail, and then I'd find allies inside the system who can actually make something happen. I don't exactly have police connections." "Dad," Lily pointed out. "You might not," he said cryptically, "but I may be able to help with that part." Without showing my hand, Lily understood what he wasn't saying. Her father had always been careful to let her fight her own battles, to not use his position to give her special treatment. But this was different. This was about justice, not privilege. "Okay," she agreed. "I'll file the complaint today." After hanging up, Lily spent the morning organizing her evidence, the videos, notes about dates and times, even the bogus tickets she'd received. She had class in the afternoon, but she decided to stop by the police headquarters on her way to campus. When she arrived at the imposing brick building, Lily hesitated. Once she walked in and filed this complaint, there was no going back. Officers Reynolds and Diaz would know who she was, and they might make her life even more difficult. "Can I help you?" asked the desk officer as Lily approached, looking uncertain. "I'd like to file a complaint about officer misconduct," Lily said, her voice stronger than she felt. The officer's expression didn't change, but Lily noticed how his posture stiffened slightly. "Of course," he said, reaching for a form. "You can fill this out. Or if you prefer, you can speak with someone from Internal Affairs directly." Lily thought about her father's advice. "Create a paper trail. Find allies in the system. I'd like to speak with someone." "Please." 20 minutes later, Lily was sitting across from Detective Rivera, explaining the pattern of harassment she'd experienced. Rivera listened intently, occasionally making notes but mostly just letting Lily talk. "May I see the videos?" Rivera asked when Lily finished her account. Lily handed over her phone. "All 3 incidents are there." Rivera watched each video carefully, her expression growing more troubled with each one. When she finished, she handed the phone back to Lily. "Ms. Matthews, I want you to know that I take these allegations very seriously. This isn't the first complaint we've received about these officers, though most people don't have such thorough documentation." Lily's eyes widened slightly. "There are others?" Rivera nodded. "Several. But without evidence like yours, it's been difficult to build a case." She leaned forward. "Would you be willing to make a formal statement? It would significantly strengthen our investigation." "Yes," Lily said without hesitation. "That's why I'm here." As she left the police station an hour later, Lily felt both relieved and anxious. She'd done the right thing, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a much bigger storm. What she didn't know was that Detective Rivera had immediately pulled the personnel files of Officers Reynolds and Diaz after their meeting, and that at the same time in a federal building across town, Thomas Matthews was making a phone call to an old friend in the Justice Department about a possible pattern of civil rights violations at the 5th Precinct. The wheels were now in motion, and neither Lily nor the officers who had targeted her had any idea how far and fast those wheels would turn. 3 days after filing her complaint, Lily sat in Professor Garcia's office, nervously fidgeting with the strap of her bag. The distinguished law professor had been her mentor since her first year, and if anyone could give her sound legal advice, it was her. The sun was setting as Lily Matthews drove home from her law school internship, painting the sky with streaks of orange and pink. Her dark brown hair was pulled back in a messy bun, and her eyes were tired after a long day of filing paperwork and sitting in on client meetings. All she wanted was to get home, kick off her shoes, and maybe order some takeout while reviewing her case notes. The flash of red and blue lights in her rearview mirror made her stomach drop. Not again, she whispered to herself, pulling her small blue sedan to the side of the road. This was the third time in 2 weeks. The first time they said her registration sticker looked suspicious. The second time they claimed she rolled through a stop sign, which she absolutely hadn't. Now what? Lily took a deep breath and placed her hands on the steering wheel where they could be seen. Her father's words echoed in her head. Always be polite, always be respectful, but always know your rights. She reached over to grab her phone from her bag, quietly turning on the recording function before placing it in the cup holder with the camera facing outward. 2 officers approached her car, one on each side. The taller one tapped on her window with his flashlight, even though it was barely dusk and perfectly bright outside. "License and registration," he said without introducing himself when she rolled down the window. His nameplate read Officer Reynolds. His partner, a shorter man with a buzz cut whose nameplate read Officer Diaz, leaned down to peer into her back seat. "May I ask why I've been pulled over?" Lily asked, keeping her voice steady as she handed over her documents. "Your left taillight is out," Officer Reynolds replied, not even glancing at the back of her car. Lily frowned. "That's impossible. I had it checked yesterday after I was pulled over last week." Officer Diaz smirked. "Well, looks like your mechanic didn't do a very good job." "Step out of the vehicle, please." "Am I being detained?" Lily asked, remembering what she'd learned in her criminal procedure class. "Just step out of the car, miss," Reynolds repeated, his hand moving to rest on his belt near his holster. The gesture wasn't subtle. Lily swallowed hard and complied, making sure to grab her phone as she exited. "I'd like to check this taillight myself if you don't mind." Reynolds blocked her path. "We have reason to believe there may be illegal substances in your vehicle." "Do you consent to a search?" Lily felt her face flush with anger and fear. "No, I don't consent. What possible reason could you have to suspect that?" "We've had reports of drug trafficking in this area," Diaz cut in. "Nice car, college student, driving through it this time. Fits the profile." "That's not reasonable suspicion and you know it," Lily countered, trying to keep her voice from shaking. "I'm a law student. I know my rights." "Oh, we've got a legal expert here," Reynolds said to his partner with an exaggerated eye roll. "Listen, you can make this easy or hard. Easy way is you let us take a quick look, and if there's nothing to find, you're on your way in 5 minutes. Hard way involves bringing in the K9 unit, which will take about an hour to get here." Lily knew they were bluffing about how quickly they could get a dog there, but she also knew that standing on the side of the road arguing with 2 increasingly hostile officers wasn't the safest position to be in as the sky grew darker. Her phone was still recording, capturing every word. "Fine," she relented, "but I want to record this search." "Do what you want," Reynolds shrugged. "But keep your distance." Lily stood back, watching as the officers roughly pulled items from her car. Her gym bag was dumped onto the ground, her notebooks flipped through and tossed aside, and her glove compartment emptied. They even removed the floor mats and pried up the edges. "You won't find anything because there's nothing to find," she said, struggling to keep her voice level as they manhandled her belongings. After 20 minutes of searching, the officers looked frustrated. Diaz slammed her glove compartment shut with unnecessary force. "Looks clean," he muttered to Reynolds. Reynolds wasn't ready to give up. He approached Lily again, standing too close for comfort. "Where are you coming from?" "My internship at Henderson Legal Aid," Lily answered. "Like I do every Tuesday and Thursday." "And where did you stop on the way home?" "Nowhere. I came straight from the office. So if we check traffic cameras, that's what we'll see?" Lily felt a chill despite the warm evening. "Yes, that's exactly what you'll see." "Are traffic cameras usually checked for broken taillights?" Reynolds ignored her question. "Pop the trunk," she did as instructed. The trunk contained nothing but a spare tire, a small toolbox, and an emergency kit her father had insisted she keep in her car. Reynolds prodded at everything before finally shutting it with a slam. "Your taillight," Lily reminded them. "Can I see it now?" Reynolds and Diaz exchanged a glance before the latter shrugged and gestured toward the rear of the car. Lily walked around to check, keeping her phone recording. Just as she suspected, both taillights were functioning perfectly. "Looks like it's working now," Reynolds said without a hint of embarrassment. "Must have been a loose connection." "Or maybe there was never anything wrong with it," Lily suggested, unable to keep the edge from her voice. "Watch your tone," Diaz warned. "We're just doing our job. Is your job to pull me over 3 times in 2 weeks for violations that don't exist?" Reynolds pulled out his ticket book. Actually, I'm noticing your right front tire is over the line marking the shoulder. That's improper lane usage. You've got to be kidding me, Lily said, but quickly bit her tongue when she saw the dangerous look in Reynolds' eyes. Would you like to add interfering with a police officer to that? He asked as he scribbled on the ticket. Lily remained silent, fuming as he handed her the citation. Drive safely now, Diaz added with a smirk as they finally returned to their patrol car. Lily stood beside her vehicle until the police cruiser pulled away, then slowly began picking up her scattered belongings from the ground and returning them to her car. Her hands were shaking so badly she dropped her water bottle twice. Once everything was back in place, she sat in the driver's seat for several minutes, focusing on her breathing until she felt calm enough to drive. This has to stop, she whispered to herself, stopping the recording on her phone and saving it. She had 3 videos now. 3 incidents of being pulled over for no legitimate reason. Once could be a mistake. Twice could be coincidence. 3 times was a pattern. As she finally pulled back onto the road and continued her journey home, Lily's mind was racing. She was a law student. She understood how the system worked, and how it often didn't work for people who couldn't fight back. She'd seen enough at her legal aid internship to know that what happened to her happened to people every day, and many didn't have the knowledge or resources to challenge it. By the time she parked outside her apartment building, Lily had made up her mind. She wasn't going to let this go. These officers were abusing their power, and who knew how many other people they'd harassed. Someone needed to hold them accountable. She just hadn't decided yet how to go about it. Filing a complaint could make things worse if these officers decided to target her more aggressively, but staying silent meant they'd keep doing this to others. As Lily climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment, she pulled out her phone and opened her contacts. There was one person who always knew what to do in difficult situations. Her finger hovered over the name for a moment before she pressed call. "Dad?" she said when he answered. "Something's happened again. I need your advice." What Lily didn't mention, what she never mentioned to anyone, was exactly who her father was. It wasn't just that Thomas Matthews had good advice about dealing with law enforcement. It was that Thomas Matthews was in a unique position to do something about corrupt officers. But Lily had always insisted on making her own way, on being treated like any other law student, any other citizen. She'd even used her mother's maiden name at school to avoid special treatment. She wanted to fix this problem the right way, through proper channels. But as she described the third stop to her father, hearing the controlled anger in his voice grow with each detail she shared, she wondered if maybe it was time to let him help, not because she was his daughter, but because this was exactly the kind of injustice he'd dedicated his career to fighting. "Send me the videos," he said after she finished her story, "all 3 of them. Then we'll talk about next steps." As Lily hung up, she felt a strange mix of emotions. Fear about what might happen next, anger at how she'd been treated, but also a sense of resolve. Whatever happened, she wasn't going to let Officers Reynolds and Diaz continue abusing their power. What those officers didn't realize was that they hadn't just picked on any pretty law student, they'd picked on the wrong one. Lily unlocked the door to her apartment and immediately kicked off her shoes. Her roommate Zoe was sitting cross-legged on their worn couch, surrounded by textbooks and empty coffee cups. "You look like you've had a day," Zoe said, glancing up from her notes. Her curly hair was piled on top of her head and her glasses were sliding down her nose. "It happened again," Lily replied, dropping her bag on the floor and collapsing next to her friend. "Those same cops pulled me over. 3rd time in 2 weeks.